My name is Father Michael O'Brien, and I came to Redemption Creek, Colorado in the autumn of 1876, carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel, my father's rosary, and an unshakable faith that God had called me to minister to the forgotten souls of the American frontier. I was 32 years old, fresh from the seminary in Dublin, and naive enough to believe that good intentions and strong faith could overcome any challenge the Wild West might throw at a young Irish priest. The town of Redemption Creek was aptly named. It sat in a valley where three mountain streams converged, creating a natural crossroads for miners, ranchers, and travelers heading west. The settlement had grown rapidly around a silver mine discovered 5 years earlier, and now boasted nearly 800 residents, a main street lined with businesses, and enough saloons to keep the local temperance society perpetually outraged. What it didn't have was a proper church. The previous priest, Father Martinez, had died of consumption the winter before, and the small wooden chapel he'd built had burned down in a fire that same spring. The congregation had been meeting in the schoolhouse, but they'd written to the diocese requesting a new priest and funds to build a proper house of worship. I was their answer to prayer, though I suspected some of them might question God's judgment once they got to know me. Sheriff William Garrett met me at the stagecoach stop, a weathered man in his 40s with steel-grey eyes and the kind of mustache that seemed mandatory for lawmen in this part of the country. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent years keeping the peace in a town where violence was as common as dust storms. "Father O'Brien?" he asked, touching the brim of his hat. "I'm Bill Garrett, sheriff of this fair town. Welcome to Redemption Creek." "Thank you, Sheriff. I'm grateful for the welcome. How was the journey from Denver?" "Educational," I replied, rubbing my back where the stagecoach seats had left their mark. "I'm beginning to understand why Americans value their horses so highly." Garrett chuckled. "You'll get used to it. Most things out here take some adjusting to." As we walked through the town, I was struck by the energy of the place. Men in work clothes moved with purpose. Dust swirled constantly in the air, and the sound of hammers and saws suggested continuous construction. It was a town being born, growing, finding its identity with each passing day. "That's the mayor's store." Garrett pointed to a large building with Thornton General Goods painted across the front. "Samuel Thornton. Good man, though he's got strong opinions about most things." "And that?" "Dr. Mitchell's office. She's our physician. Came here from back east after her husband died. Finest doctor between Denver and San Francisco, though some folks still aren't comfortable with a woman practicing medicine." "A woman doctor?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Don't let her gender fool you, Father. She saved more lives in this town than anyone else, myself included. She'll be an important ally for you." "Ally?" "You'll understand soon enough. This is a rough town, Father. Good people, but rough. They're not used to having a priest around, and some of them like it that way." We stopped in front of a modest wooden building that would serve as both my residence and temporary chapel until a proper church could be built. It was simple but clean, with a small bell tower that gave it an unmistakably religious appearance. "It's not much," Garrett said, "but it's a start." "It's perfect," I replied, meaning it. "Christ himself was born in a stable. I think I can make do with this." "That's a good attitude. You'll need it." "Sheriff," I said as we unloaded my meager belongings, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What happened to Father Martinez? Beyond the consumption, I mean. Was he accepted here?" Garrett was quiet for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "Father Martinez was a good man, but he was old school. Fire and brimstone, you might say. He preached about sin and damnation, which made some folks uncomfortable. This town has its share of people trying to escape their past. And what do they expect from me? I honestly don't know. But I'll tell you this, you'll be tested. This town has a way of challenging a man's principles." "What kind of challenges?" "The kind that make you choose between what's legal and what's right, between what's safe and what's moral, between what people want to hear and what they need to hear." His words proved prophetic sooner than I expected. I spent my first week in Redemption Creek getting to know the community. I visited the sick, blessed newborns and held services in the schoolhouse on Sundays. The congregation was small but dedicated, mostly families with children and older residents who remembered more civilized times. Mayor Thornton proved to be a jovial man with a politician's smile and a merchant's shrewdness. He welcomed me warmly and immediately began discussing plans for a new church building. "We need something that befits a growing community," he said over dinner at his home. "Something that shows we're not just a rough mining town, but a place where decent people can raise their families." "I'm more concerned with the spiritual foundation than the physical one," I replied. "A church is its congregation, not its building." Of course, but appearances matter, Father. They matter a great deal. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was a revelation. She was a woman of remarkable intelligence and compassion, with dark hair she wore in a practical bun and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been widowed young and had come west to start fresh, establishing a medical practice that served everyone from mine workers to ranchers' wives. "I'm not particularly religious," she told me frankly during one of our conversations, "but I believe in the good that churches can do. You'll find allies here, Father, but you'll also find challenges you didn't expect." "What kind of challenges?" "The kind that test whether your faith is strong enough to survive contact with reality." I didn't understand what she meant until the night of October 15th, when everything changed. I was in the chapel working on Sunday's sermon by lamplight when I heard a soft knock at the door. It was past 10 o'clock, late for social calls, but emergencies didn't keep regular hours. "Come in," I called, setting down my pen. The door opened slowly, and a man stepped inside. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and a face that might have been handsome if not for the hardness around his eyes. He wore dusty trail clothes and carried himself with the careful alertness of someone accustomed to danger. "Father O'Brien," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, how can I help you?" "I need—" He paused, looking around the small chapel as if checking for hidden observers. "I need to make a confession." "Of course. Please, sit down." He remained standing, his hand resting on the butt of his gun. "You don't understand, Father. I'm not just any penitent. It doesn't matter who you are. God's forgiveness is available to all, even to Jake Morrison." The name hit me like a physical blow. Jake "Blackjack" Morrison was one of the most wanted men in Colorado Territory. He was accused of robbing banks, rustling cattle, and killing at least 3 men in gunfights. There was a $500 bounty on his head, and every lawman from Denver to Santa Fe was looking for him. "Yes," I said quietly, "even to Jake Morrison. You know who I am? I know what they say about you, but I also know that every man deserves a chance at redemption. And if I tell you things in confession, things that might help the law catch me, the confessional is sacred. Whatever you tell me in confession stays between you, me, and God, even if it means protecting a wanted man. Even then." He studied my face for a long moment, then slowly removed his hat and knelt before the makeshift altar I'd constructed from a wooden crate and a white cloth. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." What followed was the most harrowing confession I'd ever heard. Morrison spoke of violence, of men killed in desperation and anger. He spoke of mistakes that had spiraled out of control, of a life that had taken a wrong turn and never found its way back. But he also spoke of regret, of sleepless nights haunted by the faces of his victims. He spoke of a 12-year-old son he hadn't seen in 2 years, and of a desperate desire to find some way to make amends for the damage he'd done. "I'm tired, Father," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of being the monster everyone thinks I am." "Then stop being that monster. It's not that simple. They'll never let me live it down. They'll hang me the moment they find me. Perhaps, but dying as a penitent man is better than living as a lost soul." "Is it? Is it really? Only you can answer that." When the confession was over, I gave him absolution and watched him disappear into the night. I locked the door behind him and sat in the darkness, wrestling with the implications of what had just happened. I was harboring the confession of a wanted killer. By law, I should report him to Sheriff Garrett immediately. But by the sacred laws of my faith, I was bound to protect the sanctity of the confessional. I spent the rest of the night in prayer, seeking guidance that didn't come. The next morning, I was awakened by pounding on my door. Sheriff Garrett stood outside with 3 other men, all armed and looking grimly determined. "Father," Garrett said, "we need to talk." "Of course, come in." "Jake Morrison was seen in town last night. Multiple witnesses saw him heading toward the chapel." "I see. Did he come here?" "Yes." "And he made his confession. What did he tell you?" "I can't say. Can't or won't. The confession is sacred, Sheriff. I cannot and will not betray it, even for a killer, especially for a killer. He's the one who needs God's mercy most." Garrett's expression hardened. "Father, that man is wanted for murder. He's dangerous. If you're protecting him, I'm protecting the confessional. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're choosing to protect a killer over the safety of this community. I'm choosing to honor my vows and my faith. Your faith won't stop Morrison from killing again. Perhaps not. But betraying the confessional would stop anyone from ever trusting it again. So you're going to let him go free. I'm going to let God judge him, just as God will judge all of us." Garrett stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "You're making a mistake, Father. A dangerous mistake. Perhaps. But it's my mistake to make." After they left, I sat alone in my chapel, wondering if I'd just made the most important decision of my life or the most foolish. Outside, I could hear the sounds of the town coming to life. Horses, voices, the ring of hammers on metal. By noon, word had spread throughout Redemption Creek that the new priest was protecting a killer. People began gathering in the street outside my chapel, their voices growing louder and more hostile with each passing hour. I had divided the town, just as Garrett had predicted. But I had also drawn a line in the sand, declaring that some things were more important than convenience, more sacred than popular opinion. The question was, would my faith be strong enough to survive what was coming? Because I had the feeling that Jake Morrison's confession was just the beginning. The real test was yet to come. Chapter 2. By evening, the crowd outside my chapel had grown to nearly 100 people. Their faces glowed orange in the torchlight, and their voices carried the ugly edge of mob mentality. I could hear Mayor Thornton trying to calm them, but his words were lost in the angry murmur that seemed to pulse like a living thing. "O'Brien!" someone shouted. "Send the killer out!" "We know he's in there," cried another voice. "Justice for the victims!" I stood at the window, looking out at faces I'd come to know over the past week. Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, the elderly woman who'd been among my most devoted parishioners, stood near the front of the crowd, her usual kindly expression replaced by something cold and hard. Jim Patterson, the mine foreman who'd shaken my hand warmly after Sunday service, now carried a rifle and wore the look of a man ready to use it. A sharp rap at my door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Dr. Sarah Mitchell, her medical bag in one hand and a look of grim determination on her face. "May I come in?" she asked quietly. "Of course." She entered and closed the door behind her. "Is he here?" "Who?" "Don't play games with me, Father. Morrison, is he here?" "No, but he was here last night." "Yes." "For confession?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "And you won't tell them what he said?" "I cannot." "Cannot or will not?" "Both." Dr. Mitchell set down her bag and studied me with those penetrating eyes. "You realize what you're doing, don't you? You're destroying yourself for a man who's probably already 50 miles away." "I'm not destroying myself, I'm upholding my faith." "Your faith is going to get you killed. That crowd out there isn't interested in theological debates. They want blood, and if they can't have Morrison's, they'll settle for yours. Then so be it. You're not the martyring type, Father. You're too practical for that. How do you know what type I am?" Because I've been watching you for a week. You're a good man, trying to do good work in a difficult place. You're not a fanatic or a zealot. You're someone who genuinely wants to help people. And helping people sometimes means making hard choices. Like protecting a killer? Like protecting the sanctity of confession. If word gets out that I betrayed the confessional, no one will ever trust it again. How many souls might be lost because people can't confess their sins freely? Doctor, Mitchell was quiet for a moment. You really believe that? I do. Even if Morrison kills again, even then. And if that crowd out there decides to take matters into their own hands, then I'll face whatever comes. You're either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both. She smiled slightly. Probably both. But for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. You do. I do. I've seen too many cases where expedience trumped principle, where people did the easy thing instead of the right thing. It's refreshing to meet someone who won't compromise their beliefs for convenience. Even if those beliefs might cost lives? Even then, because without principles, we're just animals pretending to be civilized. Another knock at the door interrupted us. This time, it was Sheriff Garrett, alone and looking troubled. "Father," he said, "we need to talk." "Sheriff, the crowd's getting restless. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep them under control. I appreciate your efforts. Don't thank me yet. I'm not here as your protector. I'm here as the law." "I see. I've received word that Morrison was spotted heading south this morning. He's gone, Father. Whatever protection you thought you were providing, it's over. The protection I was providing was to the confessional, not to Morrison personally. The result is the same. A killer escaped justice. Perhaps. Or perhaps he found something more important than justice. What's more important than justice? Redemption." Garrett shook his head. "You're a good man, Father, but you're naive. Men like Morrison don't get redeemed. They get killed or they get hanged. That's the only justice there is out here. Then perhaps it's time for a different kind of justice." "What kind?" "The kind that transforms instead of destroys. The kind that saves souls instead of just punishing bodies." Pretty words, but they won't bring back the men Morrison killed. "No, but they might prevent other men from following his path." "How?" "By showing that there's always a chance for redemption, that no one is beyond God's mercy. And if you're wrong, if Morrison kills again, then I'll have to live with that knowledge. But I'll still believe I did the right thing." Garrett studied me for a long moment. "You know they're going to run you out of town?" "Probably." "And you're willing to sacrifice your ministry here for one man's confession?" "I'm willing to sacrifice my ministry here for the principle that confession represents, for the idea that every person deserves a chance at redemption. Even killers, especially killers, they're the ones who need it most." "Father," Dr. Mitchell interjected, "there's something you should know." "What?" "About Morrison, about why he's so hated here." "Tell me." 2 years ago he robbed the bank here in town. But that's not the worst of it. During the robbery, a little girl was killed. Sarah Jane Patterson, Jim Patterson's daughter. She was 8 years old. I felt the blood drain from my face. Killed how? Caught in the crossfire. Morrison was shooting it out with the bank guards, and a stray bullet. She didn't finish the sentence. Dear God. Now, do you understand why they want him so badly? Why they're so angry at you for protecting him? I understand their anger, but I also understand that vengeance won't bring that little girl back. No, but it might prevent other little girls from dying. Or it might just perpetuate a cycle of violence that never ends. And what if you're wrong? Then I'll answer to God for my mistake, but I'd rather answer for showing too much mercy than too little. Sheriff Garrett stepped toward the door. I have to go back out there and try to calm them down. But, Father, I'm going to give you some advice. Pack your things and leave town tonight. Quietly. It's the only way you'll survive this. I won't run. Then you're a fool. Perhaps. But I'm a fool who keeps his word. After they left, I sat alone in my chapel, listening to the crowd outside. Their voices had grown louder, more insistent. I could hear individual words now: murderer, coward, betrayer. They weren't wrong, in a way. I was protecting a man who had killed a child. I was choosing principle over pragmatism, faith over common sense. But I was also upholding something sacred, something that transcended the immediate demands of justice. I was protecting the idea that everyone deserved a chance at redemption, that no one was beyond God's mercy. A sound at the back door made me turn. It was barely audible, but I heard it clearly. 3 soft knocks, followed by 2 more. I opened the door cautiously and found Jake Morrison standing in the shadows, his face haggard and desperate. "You came back," I said. "I had to. I've been thinking about what you said, about redemption. Come in, quickly." He entered, and I closed the door behind him. "The whole town is looking for you. They're ready to lynch me for protecting your confession." "I know. I saw them. That's why I came back." "What do you mean?" "I mean I can't let you suffer for my sins. I can't let an innocent man pay for what I've done." "Morrison." "Jake. My name is Jake." "Jake, then. You don't understand. I'm not suffering for your sins. I'm suffering for my principles." "Same thing, isn't it?" "No. My principles are my choice. Your sins are your burden." "And what if I want to share that burden?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I turn myself in? What if I face the consequences of what I've done?" "They'll hang you." "Probably, but at least I'd die as a man instead of living as a coward." "You're not a coward. You're a man looking for redemption." "And how do I find that redemption?" "By accepting responsibility for your actions, by making amends where possible, by living the rest of your life, however long that might be, in service to something greater than yourself. And if the rest of my life is measured in hours, then make those hours count." He was quiet for a long moment. "There's something else I need to tell you. Something I didn't say in confession." "What?" "About the little girl, Sarah Jane Patterson." "Yes?" "I didn't kill her." "What?" "I didn't kill her. I was there. I was robbing the bank, but I didn't fire the shot that killed her." Then who did?" "One of the bank guards. He was shooting at me, panicked, and the bullet went wide, but everyone assumed it was me because I was the robber." "Did you try to tell anyone?" "Who would believe me? I was a wanted man. My word against a bank guard's. So you let them think you killed her. I figured it didn't matter. I was already wanted for other killings. What was one more?" It matters a great deal." "Does it change anything?" "It changes everything. You're not a child killer." "No, but I'm still a killer. I've still taken lives." "Yes, but not that life. Not that innocent life. So what do I do now?" "You tell the truth. You face the consequences for what you actually did, not for what people think you did." "And if they don't believe me?" "Then at least you'll die with a clear conscience. And you? What about you?" "I'll continue to protect the confessional. I'll continue to believe in redemption. I'll continue to serve God as best I can." "Even if it costs you everything?" "Even then." Jake nodded slowly. "Then I guess we both have our crosses to bear." "Yes, but we don't have to bear them alone." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'll stand with you when you face them. I'll testify about your confession, about your remorse, about your desire for redemption." "You'd do that?" "I would." "Why?" "Because that's what redemption looks like. Not just the forgiveness of sins, but the support of the community. The chance to become better than we were. And if they don't accept it, then we'll know we tried. And sometimes that's enough." Jake Morrison stood up and walked to the window. The crowd outside had grown larger, their torches casting dancing shadows on the walls. "They want blood," he said quietly. "They want justice. Is there a difference? There should be. And if there isn't, then we'll create that difference, together." "How?" "By showing them that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about truth, about redemption, about the possibility of change." "You really believe that?" "I have to believe it. If I don't, then everything I've done here is meaningless. And if you're wrong, then I'll answer to God for my mistake, but I'd rather err on the side of mercy than on the side of vengeance." Jake turned from the window. "Then I guess it's time." "Time for what?" Time to face the music. Time to tell the truth. Time to find out if redemption is real or just a pretty word. Are you ready? No, but I'm going to do it anyway. Then let's go. Together? Together. As we walked toward the door, I said a silent prayer. Not for protection, not for safety, but for wisdom. For the ability to help this man find the redemption he sought, and for the strength to show this community that justice and mercy could coexist. The crowd outside fell silent as we emerged from the chapel. Jake Morrison, the most wanted man in Colorado territory, stood beside me in the flickering torchlight, ready to face the consequences of his actions. What happened next would determine not just his fate and mine, but the soul of Redemption Creek itself. Chapter 3. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. 100 faces stared at us in the flickering torchlight, their expressions ranging from shock to rage to something that might have been fear. Jake Morrison stood beside me, his hands visible and empty, his face calm, despite the certain knowledge that he was looking at his own death. Sheriff Garrett was the first to break the silence. He stepped forward, his hand resting on his gun, but not drawing it. "Jake Morrison," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the still air. "You're under arrest for bank robbery, cattle rustling, and murder." "I know," Jake replied quietly. "I'm here to surrender." "You're here to die," Jim Patterson shouted from the crowd. "You killed my little girl." "No," Jake said, turning to face the grieving father. "I didn't." "You're a liar." Patterson's voice cracked with pain and rage. "You killed her. You killed my Sarah Jane." "I was there that day," Jake said, his voice steady but filled with regret. "I robbed the bank, and I take responsibility for that. But I didn't fire the shot that killed your daughter." "Who did then?" Patterson demanded. "One of the bank guards. He was shooting at me, panicked, and the bullet went wide." "You're lying to save your own skin." "I'm not. I'm guilty of many things, but not that. Not killing a child." Mayor Thornton pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with anger. "You expect us to believe you? You expect us to take the word of a killer?" "I expect you to listen to the truth," Jake replied. "I've done terrible things. I've killed men in gunfights. I've robbed banks and stolen cattle. But I've never killed a child, and I never would." "Prove it!" someone shouted. "I can't prove it," Jake said. "All I can do is tell you the truth and let you decide whether to believe it." Dr. Mitchell stepped forward from the crowd. "I can prove it." Every eye turned to her. Sheriff Garrett frowned. "What do you mean, Doc?" "I mean I was there that day. I treated the wounded, including Sarah Jane. I examined the bullet wound. And the bullet that killed her came from a .38 caliber revolver. Morrison carries a .45. "How do you know what gun he carries?" Garrett asked. "Because I can see it from here. Same gun he's always carried, according to the wanted posters." Jake slowly reached for his gun, causing several people in the crowd to tense, but he drew it carefully, holding it by the barrel, and handed it to Sheriff Garrett. "Check it," he said. "It's a .45, just like she said." Garrett examined the weapon. "It's a .45, but that doesn't prove anything. You could have had another gun." "Could have, but I didn't. I've only ever owned this one gun, and I've never fired anything else." "The bank guard," Dr. Mitchell continued, "Tom Wesley, carried a .38. I remember because he asked me to remove a bullet from his shoulder after the robbery. A .38 caliber bullet." "You're saying Tom Wesley killed Sarah Jane?" Patterson's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm saying the bullet that killed her came from a .38 caliber gun, and Tom Wesley was the only person in that bank with a .38. "But that's impossible," Mayor Thornton said. "Tom's a good man. He wouldn't mean to," Dr. Mitchell said gently. "It was an accident, a tragic accident in the chaos of a gunfight." "Does Tom know?" Sheriff Garrett asked. "I think he suspects. He's been drinking heavily ever since it happened. Guilt has a way of eating at a man." "So Morrison didn't kill Sarah Jane?" Patterson said, his voice hollow. "No," Jake said, "but I'm still responsible. If I hadn't robbed that bank, there wouldn't have been a gunfight. Your daughter would still be alive." Patterson stared at him for a long moment, then suddenly lunged forward. "You bastard! You still caused it. Sheriff Garrett caught him before he could reach Jake. Easy, Jim, easy. He's right, Jake said. I am responsible, not for pulling the trigger, but for creating the situation that led to her death. I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. Which won't be very long, someone in the crowd muttered. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But however long it is, I want to spend it trying to make amends. How? Mrs. Hartwell asked. How do you make amends for destroying a family? I don't know if I can, but I want to try. I want to work, to pay back what I stole, to help the people I've hurt. You want to work? Mayor Thornton laughed bitterly. You're a wanted man. You'll be in jail or dead within the week. Then I'll work in jail. I'll work on the chain gang. I'll work until I die if that's what it takes. Pretty words, Garrett said. But the law is the law. You're wanted for murder in 3 counties. You'll stand trial, and if you're convicted, you'll hang. I know, and I accept that, but I want to face it honestly. I want to tell the truth about what I did and what I didn't do. And what about the other killings? Someone asked. The ones you admit to? They were all in fair fights, men who drew on me first. I defended myself, but I never shot anyone in the back. I never killed anyone who wasn't trying to kill me. That's still murder in some places, Garrett said. Maybe, but it's the truth, and the truth is all I have left. Died. I had been listening to this exchange in growing amazement. This wasn't the same man who had stumbled into my chapel the night before. This was a man who had found something worth more than his life, his integrity. Sheriff, I said, I request permission to speak. Go ahead, Father. I want to testify about Jake Morrison's confession, about his remorse, his desire for redemption, his commitment to making amends. The confessional is sacred, Mrs. Hartwell said. You can't reveal what was said. I can with his permission, and I can testify about his character, his sincere repentance, his willingness to face the consequences of his actions. You'd do that? Jake asked. I would. I believe in redemption, and I believe you've found it. Even if it cost you your position here? Even then. Why? Because this is what redemption looks like. Not just the forgiveness of sins, but the courage to face the truth, the willingness to accept responsibility, the commitment to change. Pretty words, someone in the crowd said, but they won't bring back the dead. No, I agreed, but they might prevent more death. They might show us a different way to handle justice. What kind of way? Patterson asked. A way that seeks truth instead of vengeance. A way that tries to heal instead of just punish. A way that believes in the possibility of change. And if we're wrong, if Morrison is just playing us, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I don't think we're wrong. I think we're seeing a man who's genuinely found his way back to his humanity. His humanity. Patterson's voice rose. What about my daughter's humanity? What about the humanity of his other victims? They deserve justice, I said. Real justice. Not just revenge, but truth. And the truth is that Jake Morrison is not the monster you think he is. He's a man who made terrible choices and is now trying to make better ones. So, what are you suggesting? Sheriff Garrett asked. I'm suggesting we let him prove it. Let him work to make amends. Let him face trial honestly, with all the facts known. Let him show us what redemption really means. And if he runs, then we'll know we were wrong, but I don't think he'll run. I think he's tired of running. Is that true? Garrett asked Jake directly. Are you tired of running? Yes. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. I want to face what I've done and try to be better. Even if it means death? Even then, better to die as a man than live as a coward. The crowd murmured, and I could see uncertainty in their faces. The simple desire for vengeance was being complicated by the possibility of truth, of redemption, of something more complex than an eye for an eye. I want to say something, Jim Patterson said suddenly. The crowd fell silent. I want to say something about my daughter. Go ahead, Jim, Garrett said gently. Sarah Jane was 8 years old. She loved flowers and puppies and Sunday school. She was the light of my life, and when she died, I wanted to die too. "We know, Jim," someone said softly, "but Sarah Jane was also a good Christian girl. She believed in forgiveness. She believed in second chances. She believed that people could change." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if Sarah Jane were here, she'd want us to do the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the popular thing, but the right thing. And what's the right thing? I don't know, but I know it's not lynch law. I know it's not mob justice. I know it's not hanging a man without a trial. So what do you want us to do?" "I want us to let the law take its course. Real law, not mob law. I want Morrison to face trial, to tell his story, to let a jury decide his fate. And if he's acquitted, then I'll accept that. Because that's what Sarah Jane would want. She'd want justice, not revenge." "Are you saying you forgive him?" "I'm saying I want to try. I'm saying I think Sarah Jane would want me to try." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then Mayor Thornton spoke. "If that's what you want, Jim, then that's what we'll do." "Is that agreed?" Sheriff Garrett asked. "We let the law take its course?" There were murmurs of assent from the crowd, not enthusiastic, but genuine. "All right then," Garrett said. "Jake Morrison, you're under arrest. You'll be held in the county jail until trial." "I understand." "And Father O'Brien?" "Yes. You'll be expected to testify about Morrison's character and his confession, if he gives permission. I'll be there, even if it costs you your position here." Even then, as Sheriff Garrett led Jake Morrison away, the crowd began to disperse. Some people avoided my eyes, others nodded respectfully. A few came forward to shake my hand. "You did the right thing, Father, Doctor," Mitchell said. "It took courage." Did I? I'm not sure I know what the right thing is anymore. None of us do. But you followed your principles, and that's what matters. And if Morrison is just playing us, if he runs or kills again, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I don't think he will. I think you helped him find something he'd lost. What's that? His soul. Diep. As I walked back to my chapel, I reflected on the events of the past 2 days. I had come to Redemption Creek to minister to lost souls, and I had found one in the most unlikely place. I had stood up for principles that seemed to defy common sense, and I had seen a community struggle with the difference between justice and revenge. I didn't know what the future held. Jake Morrison might be convicted and hanged. I might be forced to leave town. The church might never be built. But I had learned something important, that redemption isn't just about forgiveness. It's about courage. The courage to face the truth, to accept responsibility, to try to be better than we were. And sometimes that's enough. 3 months later, Jake Morrison stood trial for his crimes. I testified about his confession, his remorse, and his commitment to making amends. The jury found him guilty of robbery, but not of murder, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He served his time quietly, working in the prison workshop and sending his earnings to Jim Patterson to help pay for Sarah Jane's headstone. When he was released, he returned to Redemption Creek, where he found work as a carpenter and became one of the most respected men in town. The church was built the following year, and Jake Morrison helped construct it. On the altar, we placed a plaque that read, "In memory of Sarah Jane Patterson, who believed in forgiveness." It was a fitting reminder that redemption is always possible, even in the darkest of circumstances, and sometimes that's all the miracle we need. Déjanos en los comentarios qué te pareció esta historia y suscríbete al canal para más aventuras del viejo oeste que tocarán tu corazón.